Ladke nahi rote, a phrase roughly translated from Hindi, which means boys don't cry. While these may seem to be three naive and harmless words, I've recently grown to realize that this is not the case at all, and that critical modifications to our education system must be made to be our saving grace. So let's begin by looking at what our education system currently looks like. What are kids learning in school right now? Some examples that I have up here include macroeconomics, calculus, biology, and all of that fun stuff. But in reality, this is not preparing us for the real world, where issues raised by the Me Too movement, the gender wage gap, and violence, specifically towards women, are battles that women have to face every single day. And so, every single day, a young girl walks beyond the comfort of her home and into the real world that she has not been prepared for. You know why? Because she's been too busy trying to calculate the amplitude to her cosine graph, or figure out what on earth algebra is. But what is even more shocking is that that same young girl's parents are raising her own brother in a very different way, with completely different expectations, unrealistic expectations, and frankly, toxic language. And so, while education systems may excel at informative education, they must place a greater focus upon emotional education, focusing within the classrooms to build students that have characters of respect, empathy, and for women that understand that they have the ability to stand up for themselves, and for men to realize that they have the responsibility towards women to rectify all of the wrongdoings that men before them have done. And here's why. In psychology, a theory that we encounter is the theory of enculturation. Enculturation is the process by which humans learn what is appropriate behavior to demonstrate within a specific cultural setting. And so, gender enculturation is the gender-appropriate behavior to demonstrate within a specific culture. In 1983, Martin and Halverson conducted a study into seeing if children as young as 3 to 5 years old are able to conduct gender enculturation. What they found is that children not only actively seek out information that aligns with their schema, but they will also try and reinforce that information within themselves. So let's try and place all of this into the context of an example from the study itself. A young boy is shown an image of a boy playing with a truck. Somewhere along the line of his very short life so far, he has been told by either his parents or society around him that boys play with trucks. And so he will actively seek out that information. And then he is more likely to remember that image a week later than an image of a girl playing with a truck. Because again, someone has told him that girls don't play with trucks. Girls play with dolls. Boys play with trucks. And so, he will not only not remember that image, but he will reconstruct that image. He will change it so that a week later he remembers that same image to be of a boy playing with a truck. And this was seen in children of the ages of 3 to 5 years old. Where do these gender norms come from? And why do they have such a big impact on us? A good starting point, if not the origin of gender norms, is the 19th century bourgeois society. If you're an H.L. Langlet student, I'm quite sure that you've read A Doll's House recently, because I did as well. And we spent a lot of time within the classroom talking about the cultural context of A Doll's House. So for those of you that don't know, A Doll's House is a play written by Henrik Ibsen in the 19th century, and it is based on the bourgeois society in Norway in the 19th century. And so we see that Ibsen is critiquing the societal conventions of this time by embodying the two gender conventions, or the two binary gender roles, through the main characters of Nora and Torvald Helmer, who happen to be a married couple. Torvald is the embodiment of the ideal bourgeois man. He is morally and physically sound. He is the financial provider for the family, and so everything that happens within that household is according to his liking. Whereas Nora, her entire life she has been told that to be a wife and to be a mother is her most sacred duty, almost her only duty. And she is never allowed to question that. The impact of not questioning societal conventions, specifically gender conventions, is why we see that gender roles have not changed. We fast forward to the 21st century, we see that an author by the name of Manju Kapoor, who is a 21st century writer, and she comments on the Indian society in particular, so relationships between a mother and her son, or a husband and her wife. She sees that men and women are still being brought up in the same way as that what they were in the 19th century. Men are the shining star of the family. They're provided with the privilege to have an education, to seek out a job, and they will be able to maintain that job for however long they like. Whereas women, while this is of course changing, women are allowed to have an education in some cases. What hasn't changed is that women know that at some point they will give up their jobs because they are still putting everyone above themselves, everyone else's needs. A video by Vinod Matthew suggests that it is not just the expectations that we place upon men and women. It is also the language that we raise them with that has led to these battles that women face every single day. Matthew illustrates the journey of a young Indian boy's life. And while this does present an Indian boy, I do believe that it can be applied to cultures across the world, especially in today's day and age. We see in one of the first stills of the movie that a young boy has just been born into this world. And everyone around him is telling him that you are a boy and you are not allowed to cry. When that young boy goes to preschool, he's reminded, you are a boy and you do not cry. When he wins a soccer game, he's not allowed to cry. When he graduates from high school, he's not allowed to cry. When he experiences heartbreak, he's not allowed to cry. At any point in a man's life, they are not allowed to shed a single tear. Or in fact, express any sort of emotion at all. And the long-term impact that this can have is that when they eventually grow up to be a man and marry, when they deal with issues of anger, of sadness, of failure, they don't know how to express it. And so, more often than not, it has led to the issue of domestic violence, where a man will raise his own hands upon his own wife, his own partner. And he will never know why, because he has never been taught to be empathetic. He doesn't know why it was wrong for him to insult his own wife. And so, women live their entire life in fear of their own husband. Because if they know that if they do not fulfill their roles, men will retaliate. And so in 2013, the WHO reported that 1 in 3 women experience physical or sexual violence by their own partner. But what is even more shocking is that this issue doesn't end at domestic violence. It goes beyond. Of the cases of homicide in 2012, 1 in 2 women were murdered by their own family or their own partner. Whereas only 1 in 20 men were murdered by their family or partner. 1 in 2 women, 1 in 20 men, and their own family, their own partner. But this is a fear that girls my age face too. Approximately 50% of women have been reported to experience sexual harassment since the age of 16 worldwide. Since the age of 16, that's grade 10. I was in grade 10 2 years ago. That could have been me. That could have been you. Statistically speaking, that could have been 1/4, if not more, of this room that has experienced sexual harassment. Harassment that women are taught to be ashamed of. Harassment that men are taught is okay. But what if we were taught different? What if schools shifted their focus towards taking on that responsibility from society to instead place a greater focus within the classroom on building appropriate characters? In fact, they have to, because clearly society can't. Thank you so much.